No sploosh? Now I have to find the sploosh. The sploosh is evasive. Sploosh, sploosh, sploosh. Sploosh! Hey everybody, welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips, Friday edition, though it feels like a Monday. With me, your host and disembodied hands, Quindy, disembodied beard John, sometimes my puppy if she feels like it, but she doesn't today because she's still moping because Daddy left. Hi everybody. Cheers. Cheers. I'm even still finishing my tea because, David got up late this morning, which means, of course, my whole day got shoved forward. He doesn't realize, how tight it is. He's just like, oops, I got up late. And I'm like, yeah, now I have to rush everything. And my stream's probably going to be late. So, cheers. Num, 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 num. It's the mint chocolate tea this morning. It's the best. It's the absolute best. Makes me feel like I'm having caffeine even though I'm not. I was busy with videos. Yes. Well, one of them, the one went up a couple days ago, right? And now the short went up. And then there's another short, but it's not up yet. It hasn't been edited or anything. And today I have to shoot my first of my paint-alongs and hopefully finish a paint-along. We're finishing, here, hold on. Larry, move over. Ah! Larry got petulant. We're finishing this, which is almost done. And then we're going to move on to a Moonlight Mini, which I still have to print. Let me resituate here. Larry gets annoyed when he's not in the proper position, apparently. There we go. Awesome. I did. It's a rooibos tea, so it's not caffeinated, Hedrick, but it is mint chocolate flavor. It's peppermint chocolate. It's really good. Tastes like a peppermint hot chocolate, pretty much. Tastes like I'm drinking that in the morning, without all the extra sugar and stuff. Yeah. Well, if you can. I can't anymore, Koniko. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, I can. I have learned now. I've learned my lesson that when I have caffeine, I tend to go overboard on caffeine, and then my guts are unhappy. So I've just decided. I've done this at numerous times during my life, even during college, because I really hated being dependent on caffeine and feeling like I had to have it to function. So essentially, I've gone off before. This is just the most recent. Oh, good, Quindy. Yay. Yeah, we're doing the Fire Genasi girl from Moonlight as our next paint-along. It should be a good paint-along because it's a very simple model, so we'll be able to just concentrate on technique and details, and we aren't going to have a lot of different crap to do. That was the problem with Marika. She was just too over the top. And now that I've done that and I realize that having that complex of a model is just a recipe for disaster, I'm going to, not include that in my options next time should somebody else suggest a model that's that complicated. All right, let's get this silver knocked out because I think it's mostly what we've got left, and then I've got to do the teal. Want my silver. I'm going to put just a little bit of teal in it. It's not fun for the first couple weeks. It's not fun. You're tired, you're grouchy, you're whatever it is. It's not hangry, but it's caffeine-gry. Your body is yelling at you like, what the heck did you just do? Yeah. Because you're addicted to it, right? I mean, it's the truth. So, much as, now that I've gotten past the tiredness phase, I actually feel really good. So, I'm not tired in the morning. Alrighty. We're going to put just a little bit of the teal in it since we're going to be working with the teal today. We'll put just a little bit of shark bite into this silver. Just a tiny bit. Just enough to keep it from looking too bland. Yeah, it's withdrawal. It is. It's a withdrawal. Mm-hmm. Yep, yep. That's exactly what it is. I believe I used gray liner on this. That's a fun one. We should do that sometime. I just looked at my Death Knight Black. I'm like, I should use that sometime for an NMM shader. But yeah, that's what it is. And you have to, like... I mean, it was probably 2 weeks before my body, because your body's going to, like, just slowly lose all that caffeine crap out of its system. So it can take... I found that it was, like, I would say 2 weeks before I was feeling good. Maybe it was less, and I just, I'm misremembering. I didn't actually track the days. I just kind of, like, lived through them. But I also wasn't, yeah, decreased a little each week. Well, that's kind of what I do, too. I mean, back in the old days when I did it, I went off coffee to black tea, and then I went down to, like, oolong or green tea, and then I would go off of it. And it's a lot easier to go off of it from that. Ah! A lot of gray liner decided it wanted to come out. Let's get it back in the bottle. At least some of it. There. Got about half of it back. Yeah, if that helps with your migraines, then that's different. At that point, it's medical. There's nothing virtuous about quitting caffeine. For me, it was because I had body issues that my body was just not liking it. It was causing inflammation. Anything that causes inflammation gets kicked out. I'll tell you, though, my sleep scores are up. Like, my average sleep score now is 89 or 90 instead of, like, 86 or 87 since I quit caffeine. Like, it's the only thing I changed. So I am sleeping better, which is a total bonus. So let's grab a little bit of this shark bite. Let's not do it over the mini. That was maybe, there we go. Just want a little bit on my brush. Just enough to give it a little bit of something. What's up? Oh, Kiki, are you concerned about the door? David's been leaving his shoes so that they block the door. I had to let the Keeks in. Hold on, guys. Let me go and rescue the Keeks from the door. Hey, Papa. Yeah, is that door crammed shut? Is it? Yeah, is it Daddy's slippers? It is. Let's move these. Let's move these. Yeah, let's move them here. There. There we go. Now the door can be open. You can come back. Kiki was very concerned. Were you concerned, Bubs? Were you concerned? I had to move this glass off the floor or you're going to lick it. I know you. I know you, Hound. Come on. Come on, you want to say hi to people or are you just here to investigate? Yeah? What's my Bubba? She's like, I just want butt rubbings. I don't want you to scritch my back so I can wag my tail. All right, Bubba, I'm going back to work then. Work. Yeah. Yeah. Capping it from 2 p.m. on. Yep. Yeah, coffee, I was always like, the taste, I got accustomed to it, but I had to dump all sorts of cream and sugar into it to really like it, and so I don't regret. I do regret sometimes not being able to do my soy lattes because I really, really enjoyed those. Although I guess I could try a decaf one, but even coffee, the acidity of it tends to kind of tick off my system. So when it's that way, you just learn to go without it, right? It's just the way it is. I mean, we humans like to whine, but like when it comes down to it, if we have to adjust to not having something, we certainly can. Yeah, see, I was just hitting it harder and harder. I was just hitting caffeine, not coffee, but harder and harder on the higher tea and on more tea and everything. And it just was too much. It's actually this way. Though it's more even than you'd think. But you can see the shadow area. I kept this area a little bit more. But keep in mind with 28s, this is one of the problems with zenith lighting on a 28, by the way. The problem is you're using primer can, if you're me, because you're not using an airbrush. And this is why airbrushing can give you a better result with zenith. But your aperture is so huge that when you're spraying this tiny little model, inevitably you don't get the directed lighting effect you want. It's so much easier to use zenith when you're using primer cans. It's so much easier to zenith a bigger model because you have a lot more control relative to the model size. Whereas when you're using a big aperture spray can and you're trying to get a zenith on a model, then it's really difficult. You almost inevitably just get a generalized overhead light. So yeah. So that is the lighting. Who asked the thing? I totally missed it. Oh yeah, Jake. Okay. Yeah, so that's the problem, Jake. Yeah. So though I tried to do a directed lighting on this side, it wasn't very successful because the head is so short compared to all the spray that although I do have a shadow here between the head and the shoulder, it's like, and the light, to be fair, the light is slanting like this, so it's not a super, super dramatic light. Yeah. Yeah, so if you want a more directed like lighting effect and you're doing 28 millimeter, I would say use an airbrush for your priming, at least for the white spray, the white overspray, or do sketch where you can control it a little bit more just because you're doing brushwork to emphasize the lighting. But yeah, that is the issue with doing the spray can thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we've left a bit of shadow, but not as harsh as we could have. Both arms are shaded, though. Both on the underside of both arms are still in shadow and everything. Yeah, it's not, and the legs are not super, super brought up. But yeah, it's just 28 mil. Not as easy, not as fun to zenith. Hold on while I get this thinned down. I gotta thin down my gray liner quite a bit. This probably still isn't enough, but I'll keep it for now. And then I need to get I'm actually gonna just mix some of my gray liner into my cloudy gray, make it even a little darker. Since we're doing the back side of the axe and the little axe down under, I'm gonna take this gray. I may put a little bit more teal in it. Yeah, no problem, Jake. Yeah, by all means, work with your zenith lighting when you're still working on 28s, but just be aware that it's going to give you a more useful effect if you're using primer cans when you're doing bigger models. Like when I did my Rock Troll, then it was peachy keen, because Rock Troll is huge. So if you're doing monsters, this is actually an excellent model to practice that sort of lighting on, because you can do the spray primer and you can definitely see where the shadows are. And this is why I keep models that I like, so that I can whip them out on stream and actually show you guys, instead of saying, oh, I sent that one to Ron, sadly I cannot show you. So the axe, if you look at it actually, the tip of the axe here is telling you where the light's coming from. And this is what you're doing with NMM a lot of the time. You're asking yourself if there's, when you've got a vertical surface, is there a place the light is coming from. But this surface of the axe toward the outside is much lighter, and this side of the axe is darker. And I just realized that we're not in focus. Axes are the hardest thing to NMM. Axes and curved blades, Jake. So I always tell people try with swords first. Like if you're starting to learn NMM, go with swords and daggers. But I think swords because they're bigger and they're easier. One of the models that I used for my NMM class is this guy. He's a real cheap bones orc. And there's problems because there's like spikes on the armor, but otherwise it's not a bad like mini to learn NMM on. But I'm just doing that alternating dark white thing that everybody likes nowadays. But yeah, so essentially light's coming from here, so this side stays lighter, that side goes darker. Under a bright highlight, you always have a dark shadow. Then it comes up because there's going to be reflection. Technically, right here, I should tint that reflection with a little bit of the pink here, the red. But that on a 28, again, that tends to be somewhat wasted, and it can just look like color bleed over. It's much more evident on bigger models when you start sizing up to 72 millimeter and higher, 72 millimeter and up plus busts. So there's some NMM effects that I don't do on 28 because I just feel like they tend to be more confusing than anything at this scale. And in reality, the reflection of this color would be so small right down here on the axe that you probably wouldn't see it at this scale anyway. I don't really do my old style anymore. I mean, if you do it Slayer, you just pretty much just do a darker shadow and a lighter underside. But it is true that Kiki! It is true that putting an occlusion shadow, showing something from the outside environment being reflected, is like a more realistic way to produce NMM. You're usually going to have something reflected in the environment. So doing these alternating light darks, that's why it looks good. It looks right. But essentially you just would do a darker shadow toward the top and then you'd blend it out going down. A lot of my old stuff is like that. If I've got smaller blades, I tend to do it like that. I'll likely do it. I wonder if I'll do it on this one. Maybe not. When I work on this lady on stream tomorrow, there's a chance I'll do my old NMM on her. Although this is a broad enough blade. If I can do an occlusion shadow and have it look decently, I tend to do it. But yes, David is at work today. Like real work, like went to the office. Yes, there is a tiny little hand axe under here. We're going to work on that too. I'm going to mix up one highlight and then pure white. So a couple brushfuls of our previous color with a drop of white and then some pure white. Mix 2-to-1, thinned 2-to-1 with water. Yeah, but that's not going to see much action. I mean, that's going to be much more traditional NMM, Zachariah, because it's in shadow. It's like really, really, really in shadow. It's got like there's light coming down onto it from above, but a lot of it when I hold my model appropriately, because that arm is right there. So if you have light coming from this area, you can see a lot of it is just in shadow. And this is where it gets annoying in persnickety 28 is getting those realistic assessments of where your light coming from and what would block the light. I don't like real strong directed lighting in general unless it's face forward, and even then I tend to be at the Sergio school where I like to light both sides of the mini because I really hate not painting part of the mini. Like on the bus that we're doing for Paint Along, our big Paint Along on my Patreon, I'm totally lighting both front and back because I didn't want to just leave the back dark. But yeah, pretty much how you choose to do lighting is up to you in this hobby, Jake. There is no right or wrong way. Some people will like a certain style more than others and may not like your piece if you don't do that style. That's just the way it is. You're never going to please everybody. The most important thing is that you like what you did. This is a very flat axe too. So down here on this axe, I'm really just going to bring up some light on the lower edge. because it's reflected light. There are two types of light, Jake, in NMM. One is direct light and one is reflected. Everything on the upper surface, when you've got light coming from the top, you know, that tends to be like direct light. These little things right here on the front, the little triangle here, this is also directed light, because when the axe head curves, it flashes that reflection at your eyes. But down here you're getting a direct light because it's skating off the edge of the axe, and again, it's going to reflect toward your eyes before the axe head dips away from you. But anything on the lower side of an NMM piece or the back side that is away from the light source is just reflected light. It's bounced light. And that's not optional in NMM. It's one of the two components you need. Because the two qualities of metal that you are attempting to create the illusion of are shininess and reflectiveness. And the reflected light is what gives you that reflection. So lighting parts of the piece that are not. So you can see that little highlight I put on the edge there. Yeah, you didn't really see light occlusions unless it was chrome. If somebody was trying to do sky earth, then you would see light occlusions to an extreme. But the whole stripy NMM thing that we've got going on now is a relatively new phenomenon. It's good because I have actual photographs from the actual Renaissance Fair, which include occlusion shadows. However, those occlusion shadows are not nearly as complex as a lot of mini painters make them. And that's an art versus reality thing right there. It's like, oh, if I put more of these in, it looks better. It looks cooler. So I'm going to put more of these in. So I'm just going to blend that little edge. You can see how bright that edge is. I'm going to put a highlight on the very back top as well. And that's from the light. Maybe not, actually. If I go like... It depends. Again, you've got to make sure your light source that you're using is coming at from the direction. So like if my light up here, I actually don't get any direct light on this axe at all. If I'm situating my light source accordingly, I only get the edge here. So I'm going to actually take my gray liner and darken this. Yeah, it's the rule of cool. No black dark spots, Agent Marvel, except for your shadow, which has to be under your brightest highlight. You've got to put a dark shadow of some sort under your bright highlight, otherwise you will not get NMM. And that is the shiny effect. The shiny effect is always created by a bright white next to a shadow. Always. But you wouldn't do these lines. These are occlusion shadows, no spots. You wouldn't do those dashes of light, of darkness. You would just have your dark be up here next to that edge, and then it would fade out as it went down to the edge. I've been teaching NMMs for 20 years, Jake, so I hope so. I hope it helped you. But that's it. Like it's brightest highlight, shadow underneath, or shadow underneath it, moving away from the light source. So if you have a weird light source, you have to take that into effect, or take that into consideration. And then a reflected light opposite your main light source, more or less. In general. But of course, as the metal surface is more or less complicated, you will have to alter that. You still use those rules, you just have to figure out how to adapt them. And that's the challenge of NMM. The fact that every metal surface is different shape, angled differently, different color, in a different position, different parts are blocked from the light, different parts are exposed to the light, all these things. That's what makes NMM hard. That's why it's a conceptual technique, not a mechanical technique. Blending will help you to get realistic looking NMM, but it's not necessary. You could still pull off NMM with not good blending, because it's all in the placement of the highlight and the shadow. If you grok the light, it's going to look right. So don't cry if you don't get NMM right away, because you have to understand the way that light works, and that takes time. And it's going to change for every model, which is what makes it even harder. So axes are generally considered, axes and curved blades are generally considered the hardest to NMM. Swords, straight blade swords are great, and then you move kind of to breastplates usually, and knee plates and stuff like that. I did a whole thing on this for the Patreon, the Shapes series, which was, I don't know if I still have my, oh yeah. Dusty. Which is highlighting a normal surface versus highlighting a shiny surface. And so I did spheres and cylinders because those are the two shapes you're generally going to come across. Axes tend to be flats, and that's why they're hard. Yeah, it takes practice, Jake. And like I said, choose simpler shapes at first and just be very diligent about thinking about the stuff as you're applying it. Because every blade's going to be different, right? But if you look at this, as I'm holding it, you can see that this edge is lighter, right? You can see that it's a lighter gray. That's coming from my light. I'm holding it in accordance with the light as the light would fall on the model. And the other side is darker. You can see that it doesn't get as much light. So you know then that this entire surface should be painted. And if you look at it, you can see the NMM. So look at this. We have a lighter surface here. And look, it is actually catching. The light is actually catching this lower lip of this axe, just where I put that highlight last time. And if you put your hand right under, sometimes you can force a bounce light. So you can see the bounce light hitting from the light coming off of my skin right next to the axe. So that lower edge then goes lighter. Do you get it? That's if you just... if you actually white prime or light gray prime and you just put the model under a light and take pictures, you can essentially get this. David just did that with one of his pieces. He just took pictures of it while it was still primer that was reflecting the light decently. And then he just applied, he used those pictures as reference when he was painting the NMM. And this, again, the whole, like, using your light to show what's going on is better. Again, it's better with bigger minis, but you can sometimes do it like I just did it on this guy. Lion faces for shoulder guards, one of the hardest things. Anything with a lot of different surfaces and angles is the hardest thing to NMM. You could do a simple NMM on it and get it to look okay. Doing proper NMM on something like that, though, is a pain. So you'll be fine as long as you're using simplified NMM. But anybody who's like really hardcore NMM who you ask to give you a critique is going to tell you where you went wrong. But yeah, everybody wants to walk. Everybody, I think in every hobby, everybody wants to run before they can walk. And it's fine that you want to play with it. Just don't expect yourself, like, don't give yourself a lot of pressure then, right? It's fine if you want to run before you walk, but then if you fall, don't blame yourself, right? It's not you. You decided to try something fun. It didn't turn out exactly the way you wanted it to, but then you shouldn't beat yourself up because you were, like, really far, trying something far ahead of yourself, so... There are even projects with NMM that still challenge me. Yeah, actually it's better if you use like a sticky note with a bright color. My sticky note dispenser is just doomed. If you use sticky note with a bright color, you usually can get it even more. But again, this is a darker gray, so I'm not seeing it as much. But yeah, sometimes you can do it that way. I like orange more than I like green as a bounce reflection. Especially if you're doing firelight effects, you do putting it under a bright orange card if you want a reflected firelight effect, and then just hit the card with a really strong light. I mean, and it would work even better. See, you can see that this is darker. That's why it's not working as well. This would work even better if I was still working with white primer. Yeah, that's still in progress because it is very, very difficult. That I put that bust away and pretty much like removed it from all of my site because although it is the best NMM I've ever done, it's so hard. Every element of it is so difficult because it's Sky Earth and it's a very complex Sky Earth. That I ran out of oomph on it. It has to come, essentially it'll just have to come back around when it does, or if it does. Yeah, there's two schools of thought on that. And it depends on how your brain works. Tweaking isn't for everyone. David is not a tweaker, usually. Like, I usually have to ask him to tweak or get him to tweak. If he's like, this isn't working. And usually it's never NMM that's like that. Usually for him, it's like, I found it sometimes with face highlighting. He'll be like, why isn't this working? Because sometimes just laying it out and not thinking about it too much is the answer for some people. For most of us, yes, tweaking is the way to go. Iteration. Tweaking or iteration. I think that it's possible to overwork a surface, so I will only tweak to a certain point. And that's why I tend to keep my paint real thin, because I want to have that leeway. But there comes a point when you're just gotten all confused and muddied on a surface, so watch out for that. Sometimes it really is time to move on to the next project, to put it another way. You can only learn so much from one project, and if one project keeps defeating you, finish the rest of it, call it done, move on. At some point in the future, it's going to click with you what happened with that model. Then if you really want to, you can go back. But don't let it stall you out and make you frustrated with your hobby. Never ever do that. No, Twistedoma. It's extreme amounts of work, and right now, I've got enough work with actual work. That bust isn't going to be finished for a while, if ever. And I'm okay with that. I got very burned out in there for a while, and I was just not... I'm still creeping back out of painting burnout right now, as far as my own work. That's why I'm just doing fun, light things for my own stream. Nothing too challenging. Crystal Dragon I don't consider challenging because I kind of have crystals dialed in. I know how I do my crystals, and they're really not work. It's just a lot of repetition. Where did Crystal Dragon go? Did I eat him? I must have put him in the other room. NMM is better with blending, but does not require it. I made that mistake for a long time. I felt that was the case. But if you really look, I think it was Sergio's work, among others. Because when Sergio blocks in his NMM, it looks like metal. Sure, there's lots of like lines and you know, it's just like, it's chunks of paint. But if you back up, it's metal. So I've come to the conclusion over time that if you just block something in, even if your blends aren't great, it'll look right if your light is right. Sure, when you get close, you can see all the blotchiness, and then it won't look as good. But don't get into the trap of thinking you have to blend. The most important thing is not the blending. The most important thing is getting your light and shadow correct. But yeah, that said, everybody's working is different. So if you feel like you've got your light and shadow nailed, Agent Marvel, then it is time to work on the blending. But if your NMM is not working, just really not working, question whether it's the blending or whether it's that your light and shadow are not correct. So I'm putting in my little darks here, and also emphasizing the highlights around the facets of the blade. If that's your kind of thing, if you have that kind of like dedication, Jake, that's valid. It's a valid way to practice. I find personally that it was just as effective for me to practice just on each model that I came to. It'll take longer that way. But sometimes you can't force it. Sometimes your brain needs time to process. And as you study NMM, the best thing you can do is to start looking at metal in your environment. Start looking at it, start applying like the rules to it, see where it's correct, where it falls short. Kind of get your brain around it. Metal in real life, of course, is going to be more complicated in general than the metal that we simplify on these models. But it can get you to understand what's going on. So we got that blocked in, that blocked in. Light is going to be coming back up down here. It's a little lighter toward the bottom here. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think, don't get me wrong, I think it's a rare person who can just throw NMM down and have a look right. David is one of those people. My husband. My obnoxiously good husband is one of those people. He can just throw down some highlights and shadows and it looks right. Because he is, he's somebody who continually works on his art. And that's his practice is, he's always been a slam everything down in the model, then refine it kind of guy. Which is very different from the way I work. We work totally differently. I think it's an unpopular opinion. Luca does really like bright, hard, shiny, and I don't think he blends that much, does he? Seriously? I mean, Luca's great. Luca has a fundamental, like David, except he executes differently. Luca has an amazing fundamental understanding of the way that light is going to act on the model. And then he takes that and he pumps it up to a 12 on a 10 scale. And then it looks amazing, especially on camera. But I bet it looks amazing in person too. Yeah, does he? Does he do the wet blend? I'd have to watch more of Luca's streams. I just don't have time. There's so much media I would love to watch, but I should go watch an old Luca stream and see how he does it. But I don't know why you'd say it's not popular. Does Luca say that the way he does NMM isn't liked by people around him, or where'd you get that? Where'd you get that assumption? Seriously. Question the premise, man. So I'm just blending a little bit. Yeah, does a left sketch and then goes wild with the blends. Yeah. So no reason at all that his NMM style would be. I mean, I can't see why Luca would be an unpopular NMM style. And who cares if it is? If it works, who cares? Being popular is not everything. I know some people will argue with that. And I guess if you're trying to build a business off of it, being popular is extremely good. But I don't think Luca has problems with popularity. Last I checked, he had over 200 people watching him stream right now, so... Yeah, they have not necessarily NMM, but they have a very good, because the focus in Europe is more on art and less on painting for D&D, like over here, D&D or Warhammer or whatever. Although there still is that school, but in general, I find there's a higher emphasis on the art form of miniature painting in Europe. So I blocked in some shadows here. Let's see, just gently. Oh, I see, seriously. No, Luca's got friends on this stream. I don't know why you'd think that. I guess we do make fun of Luca a lot, but giving Luca shit is it's like a sport. So one way I could do these occlusion shadows, okay, so if I was doing old school NMM, you would just do a band of dark and you'd highlight it. But if I really look at this axe face, it's actually got a point here, right? And there is a little bit of a shift in the direction of the face here. So if I'm looking for guidance, I can treat these two sections of the axe as two separate sections, a rectangle and kind of a trapezoid. So if I'm doing that, I'm looking at this upper face here, right? And this upper face is toward the light. So we're going to put up a high highlight on that. Bright white highlight right at the top. Boom, boom, boom. Right at that edge. Bing. Then, I see. Yeah, true. I'm sure that his audience does like that. And he lets them get in as dirty in chat as they'd like, so. Whereas, that's not my thing. That's actually the danger. It's why I don't paint a lot of sexy women on my stream. Much as I love to paint sexy women, but I don't want the chat. I don't want the chat talk. I'm gonna put a little bit of water in here, into my main gray, because I'm using it for blending a lot, so I want it to stay fluid. So if we're treating this as a separate, what we can do here is we'll take a little bit of highlight. We'll make a mark here. Just to remind ourselves where that is, that little place where it kind of turns. It's probably just an artifact of the sculpt, but what we can do then, we'll get back to that, but this is our two shapes then, okay? So let us do it. And this works just fine with the basic rules of NMM. But it's a way you can do those occlusion shadows without doing like lots of little bands and having them be random. Unfortunately, there aren't many sexy men on the market. I mean, I guess there's more now. So I'm going to take this, and so this I want to highlight a little bit more as it gets up to the place where that turns. I'm going to keep this dark shadow under here because I need it for shininess, right? I'm not going to take my highlight all the way back here because we still have that light coming down, that hard light coming down here. So I don't want to get rid of my band here. I want to keep a little bit of it at all times. I think that's why I just want to paint monsters recently. Monsters are unlikely to draw. Because I'm sorry when some guy just like, you know, goes off in the chat because I'm painting a sexy female, I get really irritable. Really irritable, really fast. Anne's irritability goes from 0 to 10 in 0.2 seconds. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've got Kingdom Death Monster, and David and I both own stuff from it. But the overdone pieces don't appeal to me. I don't like that sort of thing for either men or women. I mean, you can make a very attractive model without overdoing that stuff. Sorry. But then I tend to think the sexiest women are the kick-ass ones in armor with swords, laying waste to the things around them. That's just me, though. To each their own. Yep. You need to also should not bring your reflected light up as high as your focal light. Somebody might think this guy's like sexy. I don't, but you know, somebody could. Oh, Matt. Don't get me into it. I am a humanist. I am pro-human. I am anti-asshole. Let's just put that out there and leave it. John is already sending me Knowles. He doesn't need to, and maybe some Lizardmen if he's a really nice guy. I'm not going to ask him to send me more stuff. Although I do need to poke around about giving me some more store credit because I'm going to need more minis for this stream. So I'm just doing a blend here. I tend to block in my highlights and shadows and then grab my mid-gray and just kind of blend a little bit. And bring my shadows a little bit narrower. And whether you leave a narrow or a wide shadow is really dependent on how you want the light to feel and what style you do and stuff like that. Oh, bye. Bye, Zach. For a guy whose name is Butts, yes. Controversial stance. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Agreed, Quindy. 100% upvoting Quindy's comment. All right, so we decided that this was this line. So this is when we take that white line that I found and we put an extra highlight there. That's where we put. So we have a shadow here. We're going to put and broaden this into a nice highlight. And then we still got a shadow. We're going to need a shadow on the other side of that, and that's where this comes in. So this is essentially taking this and unrandomizing it. Although this isn't completely randomized. If you look at it, here's my strongest light, and I had to put a shadow underneath it. So I chose to put my place there. Then I actually brought up a little bit more, too, because remember, this is a crescent blade, and, so I decided there would be light skating down once it changes direction, and that's my reason for this placement. However, we can also do this, where we're like, okay, this blade changed direction here, we're painting these as two separate shapes, highlight, and then this is going to come up stronger. This is still underside, and I still don't want it to be as bright as my top light. I'm going to make it a little bit curved. I'm not going to just do a blob. So I want it, for an axe blade, sometimes it works a little better to do more of a curved shape. But I'm probably not the one to be doing that. Like, usually Ron has Rhonda do those, Pendrake. Rhonda or Michael. I'm going to come in and now I'm going to get a little bit softer on that backside. So I don't want to keep this sharp. Even though we've decided these we're painting them as if they are. I want a little bit of a softer edge here. I'm happy to leave the Reapercon Sophie. I did Reapercon Sophie for so long. And you're forgetting, Pendrake, how much I hate wings. Just because it's new and a cool model doesn't mean I necessarily have to paint it for the stream or want to. So I don't want to be the one tapped for that necessarily. I spent years doing that. I spent years staff painting. I don't need to continue it here. I love this show because I can paint whatever I want. It's the opposite. You have the model and then you decide what the best light source is. Butts. If you have like this idea where you want to do like a strong directional light source, then yeah, you should definitely look for the right model for it. There are some models that just like yell at you like this is my light sourcing, and others that are very neutral and you could do from anywhere. So as I broaden out this highlight and reinforce it, I'm going to bring it along the bottom edge of the axe because reflected light. So like I said, little crescents of highlight. But what that's going to look like is a lot like these. It's just going to be more purposeful. Yeah, because most of the time what I'm doing is I'm picking a model I really want to paint, and once I look at that model and take it out, that's when I make the decision on whether I'm NMM or metallics. So the model itself decides it for me. I'm gonna bring highlights up back here. I want to bring down this shadow a bit. Because remember, part of it is having a shadow close to a highlight, so we do want to bring in our shadow a little bit more here. And we'll blend the two. But yeah, and I've talked before about my decision process for that, and usually on 28 it's entirely how much small detail do I have to do with metal. So these little guys, you know, these little fiddly, those little bits that are metal, meant that I was going to go NMM with this. That's too late. So the more fine detail in metal on the figure, the more likely I will go NMM. Because metallics, it's very difficult to have those pieces make sense in metallics. Especially filigree. It's very hard to get that filigree to look cool when you've got a metallic paint, because you can't control the highlights or shadows nearly as well, unless you really heavy shaded metallic it, but at that point you're doing all the technique of NMM without the blendability. So you've essentially made it harder for yourself, not easier. In my mind, this is all my process. Everybody's different. But this is how I make the decision. Now let's see what I can do here. I want highlight probably here, the other side of that shadow. And I'm going to just let it taper off as we get over here, because it's falling under his arm and it's also at the back side, like the light is falling here. So this is really not going to get much of anything, just a little bit of a reflection on the tail end here. But mostly dark toward the back. Hey, Richard. We did one not long ago. Oh, this one. Shade of Metallics. We're still working on her. She's replacing, Link. Kiki, that's enough, please. No, that's enough, please. There's nobody. There's nobody, Bubs. Hi. Hello, we're fine. Good girl. Yes, good girl. I'm sure there are axe murderers out there and you just scared them away. Yup, yup. Good girl. Let's do a little bit of blending. Blend, 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 blend. Taking my mid-gray and just kind of using it as a bridger between the shadows and the lights. This is why I want my gray thinned down, so I can do that. That's because when I do metallics, I do shaded metallics, so I'm using NMM techniques to control highlights and shadows. As you get, I guess, sufficiently advanced metallics resemble NMM. I feel like it's the magic and technology analogy all over again on that. Because if I'm going to do metallics, I'm going to do it on 28. I'm going to be pushing it to act the way I want it to, and that means it's going to be very like NMM. Take all of the things that you do for NMM and apply them to metallics. It's a little harder because metallics don't want to blend nearly as much, but you can get around that by blending with your shadows into the metallics. But everything on here is done very similarly to how I would do NMM. Like I've got my bright highlight, I've got a shadow underneath it, I've got the round part of the helm picking up the light, shadow, highlight, shadow, blend up to under reflection. Same thing. And so it can be a little harder because of the blending issues. Even the sword is done. I'm not happy with the sword, but it's like done that way. Might repaint the sword, haven't decided. It's actually why I like bone silvers. Bone silvers are much more blendable than any other metallic. I can layer with those suckers. That's why I chose that flake. So now we've got things mapped out that we're using intentional, we're intentionally worth looking at it going, okay, let's be intentional with the shape of the blade here and make this a highlight because it is at a point where it changes direction, right? And then put the shadow underneath it. Then we're bringing it back up to a light. This part is just buried in shadow. What I'll probably do is lighten up this bit here, right above it. And then we can have that, and I'll just lighten up a little bit of the tail end. There will be some reflected light back here, but not a lot. But yeah, the thing to do is just to like keep in mind you're doing your blending and layering with your shading colors, which are normal paints, not metallics. Because let's face it, the shadows are not where you get reflected light anyway, so doing your shadows and metallics is kind of wasted. Yeah, you need to go up with a gold on the bronze. You might want to, if you need to change the color of it, but you'll want to use a pure gold or something close, so new gold or dragon gold, to go up for a highlight on that. Bronze does have yellowish highlights, not as strong as brass or gold, but they're there. And you only hit the white metallic up on the, as I'm doing here, you only hit white in very small places. Your transition color should be gold, because the flake color of every bronze metallic is gold. Unless it's a very red bronze, then there is a reddish coppery flake that I've seen people use in bronzes. But most of the time for bronze, the flake color is gold. So using a gold flake that has a minimum of other pigment in it, that's a very straight gold, is what you want to use for your first highlights, and then you can work in some white. Otherwise, now sometimes you want that washed out color. If you're doing copper, mixing your pearl white directly into your copper paint is actually going to give you the most realistic copper highlight. You got a couple little notches in the blade down here, so I'm going to pick those up. So we're okay on this side, I'd say. I feel like that light's a little bit too strong, so I'm going to mute it by taking some of my mid-tone and painting over it, because it is not tilted toward the sky at that point, so I want to mute that highlight out a little. This is why I'm here, folks. Years of painting experience, giving you quick shortcuts that you don't have to figure out. You just need to ask me. So we can do our white line around the entire axe, which is also current fashion, but does, I think, tend to help. So I'm going to grab some of my white. Just helps to bring out that edge. Yeah, metallics are their own beast. I really like doing them on big models. That's better. So see, taking down that white just a little bit helps. But yeah, I really like, I prefer metallics. I would go so far as to say I prefer metallics on big models. I'm going to put a little bit of shadow in here. But I'm going to still keep everything lighter than it is on the other side. Now that's choosing colors. That's like a whole class on its own, seriously. I've done a lot of, they've done PDFs on that on the Patreon. So if you're a patron, go looking. I think it's under my Color Theory collection. But short answer is the first question I ask myself is, who is this character? And I make choices from there. Like what mood, what personality do I want here? You know? Or if it's a monster, I'm coming into it with a specific idea, like my peacock feathered owlbear. But otherwise, it always comes down to a choice. You have to decide which color you want to choose in exclusion of others. Once I start with just one color though. You don't choose colors, you choose color, and then you work everything else from that. At least for me. Now, people who have a lot of just like internalized color theory, and to be fair, I do this, they're going to just like seem to just pick a whole bunch of colors out of nowhere and they're going to work, right? But in reality, what they're doing is they're choosing a color scheme they know works subconsciously, or they are knowing that they want to make this model, say, a redhead, and then they're like, okay, what colors can work with that? And then they're like, oh, this. I want to do this. So I find it, the way that I teach it, is that you choose one color that you're absolutely certain about, and everything else is worked with the color wheel. And after you do that enough times, you get like me, where you just know what's going to go together. It's all iteration. That's funny, Matt. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole process for choosing colors. And like I said, I think I've got a 10-page PDF on that on my my Patreon. It's also a class that I've taught before at cons. I think I do need to bring up the bottom edge just a little bit more here. But yeah, I always start with the personality of the model. Like that's my starting point. After that's usually, do I have a particular hair color or other color in mind already? Like, am I thinking greens? Am I thinking yellows? Am I thinking reds? If I don't know, I'll just run those through my head and just kind of see what feels right for the model. For this one, I wanted to do a limited palette scheme, so we did everything. I knew I wanted reds and purples, but some things like the shark bite took me by surprise, because you just leave yourself room to iterate. Speaking of shark bite, it is now time to do the highlight on the shark bite, and then I think we're good. I think I am going to use my pure white though, and remember we were going to redo his eyeballs. I'm going to use clearer red this time. So I'm going to lighten these up. Just correcting the eye shape a little bit. There. All right. We will take those white eyes and we'll see what we can do with some clear red. Alrighty. Just gonna put that clear red over that white. Actually, you know what? Before I even do that, I'm gonna make the white just a little brighter. I feel like it could be just a little brighter. Alright, better. That's good. That's a bright red. I'll put some white in the middle of it. Yeah, sometimes you just have to get the clears. Even though you've got a bright red. Now I'll get some white in there. Let's see if I can do just a little catch light. Thanks, Derek. So seriously, Studio DKS, Derek Schubert there with a suggestion for you. Yeah, because copying the box art is like perfectly fair. Or copying one that you see. I'm just putting a little bit of a white dot if I can in the center of the eye where I would usually do the pupil. When I worked back in corporate America, I had a supervisor who had peacocks at her house. But yeah, for me, it's always questions about who's the character. Because personality is important to me, and so when I'm painting a character, I'm kind of imagining the kind of person it is. Like, if you do Bunny Sorceress in black and red, she's going to be a very different character than doing her in the bright colors, right? I could have done her with the exact same design, but with like a black and red and, you know, orange color scheme, and then she would look like an evil bunny sorceress. So color, you know, that's why I say I start with the concept of character. But that's me, and I know that I have a higher, like, my brain thinks about that more, so it's part of why I write. Alright, we're going to fade out our shark bite here I'm going to grab some of my favorite, my driftwood brown, which is really what I love to use at first for the first stages of fading color. We did it on the loincloth as well, so we'll do it along the edge here a little bit and a little bit on the dagger. Yeah, but that's fair, Kodiak. Like, it's fine if you start off trying to if you start off trying to copy a scheme, but then you like go to the side because you find that you haven't nailed it precisely, so you have to change some of your colors to get it to work. Like, that's absolutely, like, that's color right there. That's what you should be doing. It's okay to use something as inspiration and then diverge. And it's, you know, arguably a good exercise, because if you have to alter the color scheme, then you have to learn more. Okay, so once you add that driftwood brown in, it's going to green out and gray out that blue. So we're going to thin it down. We've already thinned it. And we're going to kind of glaze it over the edges to make them a little faded. I'm going to fade it out just by putting a little layer right at the very edge of this. You can also just use straight up driftwood, and as you progress with this, I would. Like, I did a mix for the first one, but now I don't have a lot of very strong shark bite here, so I don't want to cover it all up. That's why I'm keeping to the edge. But you can see the difference of that to that. Like, it's fading out, graying out the edge just a little. I'm going to mix up just a pure driftwood. So just a little bit of the actual driftwood. You can see how it grays out that edge. It's a subtle thing, but I like it as a touch if I'm fading things already. I don't like to leave a bright pop of color, especially because we can see how ragged this is and the shape of it. Yeah, when in doubt and really stumped on color, you can also just make yourself a random painted counter table, which is what I did. A random color and counter table I did for my Patreon. It's free. It's funny. But you could do one with your favorite colors on it. And then just roll a dice if you're really stumped. Right. Yeah, and his skin is really quite greened out. Like, you can see it better in person than you can on stream. But yeah, because we started it around around Halloween, so I wanted to do it like that. But yeah. Starting with a concept. Who is this character? If you pick something really wacky, people might give you like side eye over it, but who cares if you like it? If you think the concept is cool, do it. So just a little bit along the bottom edge of the driftwood brown, just to knock down that teal a little bit, and I'll do a little bit up here too. But this is such a small area already. I'm just going to do a little touches of the driftwood, like kind of along the edge. And that will mute it just a little. And still leave it teal. But see how that's taken that down? So now the teal isn't like punching you in the face. It's blending in more. Yeah. So yeah, fading out that teal is still there. It's still working with the color scheme in subtle ways, but you don't look at it right away anymore. So I've de-emphasized the accent color. I've muted it. And likewise there. So I get the best of all worlds there. I still have my turquoise, but it's muted out and it's working with everything else instead of like completely distracting you. You have to look for it now. But it's still there and it's still doing like what it needs to do by making the browns and reds more intense, right? Because of that way that the green in it will react with the red and the blue in it will interact with brown and orange. Sweet. I think that's it. Technically, I could do a little bit more black highlighting. I think I didn't highlight this fur back here, so I think I will. Yeah, it's actually a cool mini. Like the hardest thing is that it's got a lot of different surfaces, so you end up using a lot of different colors or a lot of neutrals, so I'm going to get just a little bit of corporeal shadow and add some white to it, just to put a couple of highlights up on the fur back there. And then we just have to figure out what we're going to do for basing, or if we're going to do basing on this model on the stream. Although if I don't do it on the stream, I never get time to do it, so we may do a simple dungeon tile base on this one, extrapolating from what he already has. Gonna thin out my paint, and I haven't chosen the replacement. We've still got the guy with the torch, and we've got the bee warrior. Do you guys have a preference to replace this guy? So we started a lot of new models lately, so although we could also finish Jolie, but I think I'm gonna hold off on Jolie because you want to put up a poll, Quindy. Although it looks like B is ruling. People want the B. Alright, and I'll do a little highlight here. But yeah, so I think we'll do just a simple how to take this and extrapolate it onto a wider base. We'll do that, a simple basing thing for once. Just want a little bit of highlight up here to match the boots. And mostly I'm going to keep my highlight higher up on the fur. Oof, I am so sore today. CrossFit did a number on me last night. It was bar muscle ups, which is the most gymnastics movement that we do in CrossFit. Getting yourself up on top of the bar and then pushing yourself up with your triceps so your arms are straight. And doing like 36 of those plus a bunch of dumbbell snatches. Like 63 dumbbell snatches. It was ridiculous. Even scaled. I scaled it, and I thought I was scaling it pretty well for me. But then this morning, and last night after I sat for a while, and this morning I was just like, oof. Well, you separate them into sets, right, Zechariah? So it's 3 rounds of a 400 meter, although I did 200. 200 meter run, followed by 12 bar muscle ups, followed by 21 dumbbell snatches. And I did 15 pounds for the dumbbell snatch. I maybe could have done 20, but I think I would have gotten to the point of failure. And with the 15, I was able to do the right form. So I'm kind of trying to keep my focus on form lately. I still want it to be hard. I was still drenched in sweat by the end of it, but yeah, there we go. So there's the fur. You can see how that little highlight just, made it come up and look good. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. The CrossFit is a lot. But it's making me stronger, so I'm happy. So we didn't do this fur up on top of here. We'll do that actually real quick. As I look around the model, we see spots that we didn't catch. Yeah, I actually think that these, barring the bar muscle ups, which is a weirdo thing that we only do every once in a while. I feel like he's gone a little easier on us at the start of the year than he did at the end of last year. The end of last year was kind of crazy. There we go. Got a little bit of highlight just on that fur to bring it out. Polls up. Yes. So everybody vote. B or Torch Dude. No bias on Quindy's part. With the B being caps. Everybody wants me to paint a little bee warrior, huh? Okay, that'll be fun. We can do yellow. Yellow, bit of orange. We'll figure out what other colors. Yeah, it's just a little bit of highlight there. There we go. Excellent. Sweet. And since we have a tiny bit of time, B is very spring, that's true. Oh, blue bee. That would be pretty. B wins. B wins. Yeah, I mean, we'll paint Torch Dude just because I want to paint him, and we, So eventually I'll toss him in. I'm going to grab my Reaper Zero and do a quick gray base on this. I'll probably be cutting off parts of it. So do a little bit of shading. There's some gray liner in the middle for a shadow. Blue bee. Yeah, you have a great weekend too, Turchin. And yeah, I'll be on tomorrow. I love yellow so much though. Blue bee is cool, but I love yellow. It's an excuse to paint yellow. Just doing a little bit of quick painting in the lines around these stones. Just blocking. Paint's still wet, so we're not going to get it real dark. There we go. You could if you wanted to, Pendrake. I mean, if you put a color, I personally would probably do dark purple if I was doing an off black for the stripes on the bee, just because purple and yellow are complementary. You can always use dark blue as a black option. That's why blue liner is so popular. There we go. No thanks, Kodiak. Let's see here. I wanted to grab a sample base and see if I was going to be able to fit this guy on it. Using just my fingernail to pry him up off of the tack. Got a lot of like bad tack here. Old tack. Very stringy tack. Like some sort of Cthulhuid monster. Sure it is. As long as you don't have any real black on your model. Red links, dark blue, dark purple, dark red, dark green. You can use any dark color. I use dark brown a lot. People use walnut as a black replacement all the time, and it's a dark brown. You just need it to be very dark, and you need to not put any actual black on the model. And then it will read as black. But like Nightshade Purple is absolutely a valid candidate. 9022. Totally could use that as black. But you can't have any real black on the model then. That's the thing. Because if you put real black on the model, it's like putting NMM next to metallics. The real black will instantly expose the other non-black for not being black. And suddenly it will look very purple or very blue or very whatever. So we're going to use our blob to pick up the rest of our blob. We'll pull off what we can with our fingers, and then we will use the blob. And we'll just kind of pull it. And get all of that sticky tack off the base. Okay, we've got a new plinth back for our next mini, and let's see here. So his edges fit barely within this. The problem is his base is real boring. We'll have to figure out something. I'll have to think about it. Maybe I'll make a flagstone base, but with overgrown grass and stuff. I can shift him back on the base a little bit, so that's good. So let's do that. Let's just glue him on. Oop. Oop. There we go. Just make sure that I've got it in bounds here to be inside of that mark, and we're good. Alright, we'll let that set, and we'll do some basing. People are a little bee crazy. Oh dear. Now we're going downhill fast. Well, it's a good thing that it's 10 after, which is when I started the stream, so that I could put the cover on this hive of iniquity. I'm sure. Sadly, there's, or happily, there's only a limited number of puns that people can come up with bees, I'm sure. So yes. This is Dude. We'll finish Dude's base, and then we'll start a bee. That's the plan, and I'm sticking to it. It worked out well. I like him. I like him. He's cool. Alright, yes, thank you everybody. I will be streaming tomorrow on my own channel, and we'll probably be working on this lady. We'll either be continuing work. We were doing a little bit of bronze and I'm back up here, but I'll probably block in the blades. I might do hair tomorrow, or I might refine her skin. Now that I'm finally getting everything set up, I'm kind of in the mood to start bringing her skin tones up to where I want them to be. So we may do that tomorrow. We'll see. That'll be a lot of glazing and highlighting to get nice smooth skin tones on her. She's got a lot of skin, so I want it to be super smooth. So thank you, everybody. So yeah, that'll be tomorrow at 3:30 USA Central Time in the afternoon. And thanks, everybody. Oh, everybody. Yeah, everybody's goofy. I don't know about tired, but goofy, yes. No, Richard, I got really frustrated because our iPad is just not really good enough to do, it starts breaking down when you put too many shapes on it. So, I wasn't able to really do what I wanted to with it, so I put that off. I may try it and see if I can get something a little simpler, or I may just sculpt them with green, honestly. Sculpting them with green would be fine too. Or actually, probably the better would be the cause clay. Doing it with cause. Yeah, but they're not a hard shape, right? I should be able to actually sculpt it. So, yep. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Those of you who are not going to tune into my stream tomorrow, but I hope that I see a lot of you there. Yep. Have a great one. And yeah, for those who don't tune in tomorrow, I'll see you Monday. All right. Bye-bye.